So I'm at the call center. I'm by myself for now. If you read the last part, you know things were getting out of hand. It sounds like they might be under control for now, and if they aren't, I'll be here to take your calls and send help. Dean had been staying at my place off and on lately. Allison and I are working night shifts at the call center, and he was pulling night shift at the police station. The three of us were growing steadily more exhausted. The call volume was through the roof. Dean was going out to violent crimes daily. It was wearing us out. Things came to a head Wednesday night. You see, there's this taco truck that parks a few blocks from my house. Allison and I were tired of our own cooking, so we got dressed up and walked to Angel's truck. I was no stranger to his menu, but Allison was confused. So what kind of food is this? I didn't understand her question. What do you mean? Like, is it authentic Mexican? She shook her head. No, like, what is it, torta or casa or carne? Allison, have you never had Mexican? She looked embarrassed. No, I guess not. So we had the sample platters. On the way back, we saw him. He was behind us, but approaching fast. His 7-foot-tall stature easily visible. He pushed his way past people in his pursuit of us. Before we had a chance to run, a siren whooped right next to us. Tires screeched as Dean came to an abrupt stop. He jumped out of the car and quickly placed himself between us and the lumberjack from hell. Hey, stop right there. To his credit, the lumberjack obeyed. Dean rested his hand on his service gun. Okay now. Slowly lowered the axe and placed it on the ground. The man's presence was so intimidating. I hadn't noticed the weapon in his hand. The blade was as large as my head and was polished to a mirror-like finish. The lumberjack looked at the axe, then back to Dean. He shook his head and stepped forward. Dean raised his voice. Hey, back up right now. The man ignored him. Come on, man, no one needs to die today. The lumberjack was nearly on top of Dean. Dean swore. He let go of his gun and drew his taser. He fired it into the lumberjack, who stiffened and grunted in pain before grabbing the leads and ripping it from Dean's hand. Dean stumbled forward, and the lumberjack swung a giant fist into his head. Dean flew back, his skull bouncing off the pavement. He was bleeding but managed to roll over. The lumberjack kicked him in the ribs, sending him flying. He landed in a crumpled mess. Dean looked up at us, then threw his hands in the air in frustration. Get out of here. In 2 enormous steps, the lumberjack was at Dean's side. He swung his giant axe. It caught Dean in the chest, knocking him clear across the street and out of sight. I grabbed Allison's hand and we ran. When we got to my house, the lumberjack wasn't far behind. I knew he wouldn't do much, but locked the front door anyways. The gun was upstairs. I had stupidly left it on my nightstand. I rushed to the bottom of the stairs but froze. There was footsteps running across the 2nd floor. Someone was in my house. Allison grabbed my arm and pulled me back. There's someone up there. Just then I heard a crash at the front door. An axe head was poking through it. In the distance, I heard sirens, but they were minutes away, and we had seconds left to live. Allison opened the door behind me, the basement door. Abso-fucking-lutely not, I yelled, but she pulled me with little effort. The door closed and we were bathed in darkness. We fumbled down the stairs until we reached the bottom and turned on our phone lights. Allison went deeper and I hesitantly followed. I doubted this would buy us enough time for the police to arrive, but it was better than dying instantly. That's when I saw it, an old door propped against the wall. I think it was my house's original door. I just know I never tried to remove it from the basement because it was heavy as can be. Allison walked up to the door. She gently traced its perimeter. Light suddenly engulfed us. We both looked up to see the lumberjack at the top of the stairs. We were cornered. Allison grabbed my hand. With her other hand, she opened the door. The door that was leaning against a concrete wall. the same door that I had moved out of my way in the past. She opened it, and on the other side was brightly lit forest meadow. Allison shoved me through just as that giant axe struck the concrete wall next to the door. I flinched at the shower of sparks. Allison jumped through the door as well. As she was closing it, I saw a second figure at the top of the steps. I couldn't be sure, but it almost looked like Jordan. The door closed, and the air instantly felt different. There had been a strange hum to it before. Now it was calm, almost therapeutically so. I couldn't bring myself to care about the weirdness that had just happened. I just wanted to take a nap, but Allison kept pulling on me. "Come on, Kylie. You can't stay here. We have to get you back." Man, did my head feel light. I couldn't really stand. Is this what huffing markers feels like? I knew I was being led somewhere. "Focus, Kylie. You can't be here." I couldn't help but laugh. "Allison, you nut. Of course I can be here. Wherever I am is here, so I'm always here no matter where I go." Clearly, this truth was so profoundly obvious, she had to be able to see it. Allison yanked my hair, like the little ones on my temple. I opened my eyes. How long had they been closed? Why did Allison do that? It hurt. Was that a circle of flames floating in the air? I hit the ground, way too much feeling rushed into every inch of my body. Before I could stop myself, I puked all over the ground. Fuck! Everything hurt. Another convulsion racked my body, and I dry heaved a couple of times. Even my eyes hurt. Allison was leaning over me, looking concerned. "Are you okay?" I shook my head. Hell no, I wasn't okay. "What just happened, Allison? I feel like I got turned inside out. And where are we?" I didn't recognize our surroundings. We were clearly in some sort of forest. But how did we get here? "That's normal," Allison replied. "It will all fade shortly, but we should figure out where we are and start moving." My head was still too fuzzy to bother pressing her for answers, and not a nice fuzzy, but more like having kicked in the face by a mule fuzzy. I did have the wherewithal to pull out my phone. I had service. My first thought was to call Dean, but then I remembered what had happened. Instead, I went to Google Maps. We were in the Darkwood Park. It looked like there was a gravel road not horribly far away. I mentioned as much, and we decided to head for it. We needed backup. I tried calling 911, but there was no answer. I didn't get a chance to try any of the calls. My phone shut off on me. Typical for this area. Everyone knows you don't take electronics into Darkwood Park. Allison dropped into a crouch. I followed suit. "What is it?" I whispered. Allison looked hesitant to answer. "You should stay here, Kylie. There's something I need to do. It could be dangerous, and you've already shown me so much kindness, and I can't bear the thought of you getting hurt." I put my hands on my hips. "Allison, what are you talking about? First off, if it's dangerous, I will most certainly not let you go alone. And secondly, what aren't you telling me?" There was that aura about her again. Nothing that could be picked out. Just a difference, like she was encoded right. That's when I saw the concrete building behind her. It was nearly invisible, but I could see a keypad on it. "There really isn't time, Kylie. Just know that I'm thankful for all you did." She stood and started towards the little concrete shed. I grabbed her hand, stopping her. "I'm coming with you." And that's final. She pulled her hand free, but didn't argue. As we got closer, I could see the concrete building was just 10 by 10 with a slanted roof also made out of concrete. The door was thick steel, and Allison typed in a code and it opened smoothly. Inside was almost completely dark. The only thing the building contained was a staircase that spiraled downward. Each step had a dim light illuminating it. I glanced at Allison, but she was already starting the descent. A lot of things weren't adding up. "Are your parents really in Europe?" I asked in a whisper. Somehow, whispering felt required. "Yes, but not in the way you understood it. I never lied to you, but I did conceal the truth when I felt it was necessary. I thought that was a pretty bullshit excuse and told her as much. She didn't disagree. So, what are we looking for? We had reached the bottom of the stairs and were facing another door. Records. I need to remove information before I can go home. I honestly thought I could get away with living here, but it's just not possible as long as they know I'm here. Her answers were getting more and more annoyingly vague. That's not much of an answer, Allison. She sighed and turned to me. Kylie, I'm not going to tell you everything. It would be counterintuitive if I did. Just let me know if you see computer things. I was a bit miffed by her reply. I felt like she owed me some answers. We walked the dark, quiet halls of the underground labyrinth for an hour. We found multiple rooms of unknown uses, but none that held what Allison was looking for. We went up a floor and everything changed. The walls went from bare concrete lit by naked bulbs every 10 feet to painted walls, well-lit corridors. There was even carpet on the floor. This part felt used, like people often traveled the area. And it didn't take us long to see someone. Far ahead, a man in digital camo holding a rifle walked past the hallway we were in. He didn't appear to have seen us, but Allison pulled me into the closet empty room. We stood in the dark, not daring to breathe. When it became apparent no one was coming, I turned on the light. A voice deeper than any I had heard before spoke. Well, 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 what do we have here? I spun around expecting some sort of guard. Instead, I saw something else, something horrible. Behind a set of thick steel bars stood a dark-skinned man, not like African dark, but rather his entire body from head to toe was a shiny black color. He was entirely hairless. I can say entirely because he was nude and unfortunately happy to see us. His eyes were a dark red and without pupils. Behind him swished a tail. It has been so long since someone has entered my room. What brings a pair so fine here to me? I backed up until I bumped into the far wall. This thing shouldn't exist. It was so wrong. In a similar way that Allison had an aura that smelled of distant places, the thing in front of us had an aura that oozed death and hatred. Allison glared right back at the abomination. We are not here for your pleasure. In fact, we're leaving right now. It chuckled. Oh, I doubt that. Just then the door beeped and started to open inward. Allison kicked it back shut. I heard cursing outside. Through the small window I could see at least 4 guards. We were trapped once again. The death demon was enjoying himself. Where was it you were going, changeling? Surely not into the hands of those waiting. Allison was biting her lip. She kept looking between that thing in the cage and the door. Finally, she turned to the cage. Speak clearly, wretch. What is your proposal? It smiled wildly, revealing a long set of fangs. I have no quarrel with your kind. Let me play with those who wish you harm. We'll find it beneficial. I couldn't help myself. I asked, what are you? The thing's gaze snapped to me. I felt such hate radiating off of it that I was almost sick again. I am what they made me, the perfect tool for their needs. They twisted me, made me cold so that your world might be a little warmer. Yet my effectiveness scared them, so they locked me away for they lacked the courage to kill me. I had to lean on Allison. That thing had an effect on me that I couldn't explain. Allison spoke sharply. Kylie is off limits, but do what you will with the others here. She confidently strode forward and started typing on the keypad. I was horrified. She was actually going to let that thing out. Allison, wait, don't! With a beep, the cage opened. The thing inside laughed. It sounded like a legion from hell echoing out of him. He turned to smoke, then appeared inches from my face, his black tongue licking his lips, those dreadful eyes peering into me. He caressed my cheek, his fingers ending in long, thick fingernails. And then he was gone. Nothing more than a faint hint of smoke remained. Instantly, the hallway outside was filled with screams and gunfire. I covered my ears. The sound of flesh separating from bone was too much. I'm not going to describe the scene that waited for us when we left the room. Just know that there was no one to bother us as we walked out. It wasn't just the hallway. Every room had victims in it. Every wall had a new paint job. The carnage was more than just a fight. That thing had taken a lot of joy in what it did to those people. Its artwork will haunt me until the day I die. We did finally find what Allison was looking for. She set fire to the room. How she knew that would be sufficient, I don't know. I was done asking questions. I just wanted to go home and never think about this day again. We left the same way we had gotten in. Our walk through the woods was silent, save for the group of helicopters that flew overhead, no doubt to the facility we had left. I had a feeling there was going to be a lot of empty houses in town, and I didn't even know why, but I felt like I was partially responsible for it. When I reached the edge of town, I had to call Greenbrier PD directly since 911 was still down. Adrian picked me up in the squad car. It was then I noticed Allison was missing. I looked around for a bit, but she was nowhere to be seen. And I didn't really mind. Sure, she had tried to warn me, but I felt like she could have been way more honest before putting me into that shit show. Adrian was babbling at 10 million miles an hour, like usual when I interrupted him. Adrian, have you heard anything about Dean? Dean? Oh yeah, Mr. Axe Wrestler is fine. His body armor took most of the blow, a few broken ribs and some missing molars. Shoot, half the precinct would be ecstatic to have gotten off that easy. I'm telling you, girl, we gotta get you back to your desk. Should be wild. Wild, I tell you. Adrian just did that. He dropped me off at the call center. The lights were out, so I had to start the backup generator. I tried not to think about the blood splatter across one of the desks. With the power back on, put on my headset and answered the first call. Greenbrier 911, what is the nature of your emergency? To be continued.